So if American F-16s can deliver nuclear weapons, does that mean Ukraine's F-16s will be able to do the same? That's a take I keep seeing pop up in the comments beneath just about any conversation about F-16s arriving in Ukraine over the past few days. And the truth is, the people posting these comments are either intentionally advancing a Kremlin-backed propaganda narrative, or unfortunately they were simply fooled by one. Because the truth is, this entire argument is not based in reality and is rather predicated on the general public's lack of understanding about nuclear warfare doctrine, tactical aircraft, and nuclear weapons in general. So what do you say we put this myth to bed for good? Let's dive into what actually makes an aircraft nuclear capable, and what Ukraine's F-16s will actually be able to do. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power. Now, when I tell you that this whole Ukrainian nuclear F-16 story is born out of Russian propaganda, I'm not speaking in vague terms. This narrative very literally originates with Russian Foreign Minister and Kremlin mouthpiece Sergei Lavrov, who planted the seed with reporters last June. I'll quote him directly. We must keep in mind that one of the modifications of the F-16 can accommodate nuclear weapons. No matter what modification of the aircraft will be supplied, we will treat them as nuclear capable, and we will consider this step of the United States and NATO as purposeful provocation. If they do not understand this, then they are worthless as military strategists and planners. Now, you'd think that someone with such harsh words for military strategists and planners would have the expertise to know that you can deliver nuclear weapons with any aircraft. And in fact, the provisions and modifications made to tactical aircraft like the F-16 to deliver nukes are actually all about adhering to internationally recognized standards for safety. And the truth is, you could drop a nuclear bomb out of a blimp if you wanted to. In fact, during the Cold War, the US was fielding nuclear artillery shells and even nukes in backpacks, like the Special Atomic Demolitions Munitions, or SATM backpacks that were designed to be delivered behind enemy lines by Green Beret teams on skis. The truth of the matter is, nuclear detonations begin with a good old-fashioned chemical explosion, just like any conventional ordnance. And that means you could design a nuclear bomb to detonate just like pretty much any other old bomb. But the reason why aircraft like the F-16 see significant modifications before they can carry and deploy nuclear weapons is all about adhering to American regulation and international law when it comes to leveraging nukes. And the list of American aircraft equipped to deliver nuclear weapons may be longer than you realize. We'll start with the bombers, like America's stealth heavy payload strategic bomber, the B-2 Spirit, which is equipped to deliver not just B-61 nuclear bombs, but even B-83s, which are America's largest nuclear bomb in the arsenal. These weapons have a maximum yield of 1.2 megatons, which is about 75 times the destructive capacity of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, though these weapons are being phased out in favor of the smaller yield B-61 TAC-13 with a comparably paltry 360 kiloton yield. Now, the B-52 used to be equipped to carry these same bombs, but has since transitioned to strictly carrying the AGM-86B nuclear air-launched cruise missile, which has a maximum range of north of 1,500 miles and carries the W-80 nuclear warhead, a variable yield weapon with a maximum destructive capacity of 150 kilotons. The forthcoming B-21 Raider is already slated to carry the new B-61 TAC-12 nuclear gravity bomb that's expected to replace a whole slew of older B-61 class weapons. The B-61 TAC-12 has a maximum yield of some 340 kilotons, but it will almost certainly also carry the B-61 TAC-13, a larger yield 360 kiloton weapon that was only recently announced. And it seems pretty likely that it'll eventually carry the AGM-181 long-range standoff weapon, or LRSO, a nuclear cruise missile slated to replace that AGM-86 carried by the B-52. The B-1B Lancer may have a larger payload capacity than any of these other bombers, at some 75,000 pounds, but is actually no longer nuclear capable, with its ability to deliver nuclear arms removed as a part of the Strategic Arms Reduction, or START treaty signed between the United States and soon-to-be former Soviet Union back in 1991. And then when it comes to fighters, the F-15E Strike Eagle, F-16C and D Fighting Falcon, and F-35A Lightning II are all certified to deliver B-61 series nuclear gravity bombs, all of which will be converted into B-61 TAC-12 variable yield weapons in the ongoing Service Life Extension program. The U.S. Navy's Super Hornets were also slated to carry these weapons at one point, but were removed from that list in 2021 because the U.S. Navy didn't see a need. But just to prove my point about how any aircraft could potentially deliver nuclear weapons, America's C-5 cargo plane successfully demonstrated its ability to air launch a Minuteman I ICBM out the back of the aircraft in 1974, demonstrating that the United States could air launch intercontinental ballistic missiles from cargo planes anywhere in the world. But the US ultimately opted to shelve this capability because they knew the Soviets couldn't counter it, and the concern was that it could destabilize that delicate balance of mutually assured destruction. But other than air-launched ICBMs, which I suppose would have some sort of hybrid launch procedure that I can't really speak to, America's nuclear gravity bombs and the aircraft that deliver them come with a long list of systems on board that are not meant to make these aircraft better suited for delivering nuclear weapons, but rather make it more difficult to do so, all in the name of safety. These precautions begin with the weapon itself and extend all the way into the cockpit, starting with the Permissive Action Link, or PAL, and the Command Disablement System, or CDS, that it ties into. Now, the PAL is a device mounted on or in the nuclear weapon that renders the weapon inoperable unless the user enters the appropriate code or combination. And the Command Disablement System, or CDS, is the system it ties into to temporarily disable that warhead. Then you have the Active Protection System, or APS, which will permanently disable the weapon if it recognizes unauthorized access into that PAL device. And finally, we have the Trajectory Sensing Subsystem, which will not allow the warhead to activate until accelerometers inside the weapon recognize that it's been dropped. Inside the cockpit, pilots have a laundry list of procedures to adhere to, including a nuclear consent switch to make sure you can't drop a nuclear weapon by accident. But again, importantly, if that weapon has not been armed through the PAL device, it will not detonate, even if you drop it. And what this ultimately means is that while the US Defense Department has been clear that any aircraft could potentially carry nuclear weapons, aircraft that are specially equipped to leverage American nuclear bombs carry a long list of systems on board that are meant to marry up to the long list of safety systems that are present in the weapon, effectively providing the keys necessary to arm and drop a nuke. And while these safety systems are present on American F-16s, F-15s, and even F-35s now, they are not present on the F-16AMs that Ukraine will be receiving. So let's circle back to Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, because within just a few weeks of making that initial claim, he was presented with this information about the F-16AMs Ukraine will be receiving not being equipped with the requisite hardware or systems necessary to leverage nuclear weapons. And he basically argued that Russian forces couldn't possibly discern between two different versions of one aircraft, with one equipped to carry nuclear weapons and others not. I'll quote him directly so you know I'm not taking him out of context. In the course of combat operations, our servicemen are not going to sort out whether each particular aircraft of this type is equipped to deliver nuclear weapons or not. We will regard the very fact that the Ukrainian armed forces have such systems as a threat from the West in the nuclear sphere. And that really leads me to question Lavrov's chops as a military strategist and planner all over again, because you'd think he, of all people, would know that Ukraine already operates two tactical aircraft with nuclear-capable variants out there. Aircraft they got from Russia, including the MiG-29 and notably the Su-24, which is also operated by Russia's ally on Ukraine's northern border, Belarus. And in fact, just 2 years ago, Belarus announced their intentions to begin arming their own Su-24s with nuclear weapons provided by Russia. In fact, Ukraine has even already received MiG-29s from NATO ally nations so far in the conflict. And while even the nuclear-capable versions of these aircraft were never equipped to leverage American nuclear weapons, we've already seen Ukraine overcome similar challenges with conventional systems like the AGM-88 HARM, the Storm Shadow cruise missile, and the ADM-160 miniature air-launched decoy. So it stands to reason that either Russian forces are somehow capable of very quickly discerning between nuclear-capable and non-nuclear-capable variants of the Su-24 and the MiG-29, it's just those pesky F-16s that give them trouble, or this is all nonsense. Russia is certainly well aware that Ukraine has no nuclear weapons because up until 1994, they did. But then Ukraine, Russia, and the United States signed an agreement, commonly called the Budapest Memorandum, in which Ukraine agreed to surrender their leftover nukes from the Soviet era back to Russia in exchange for assurances that Russia would never invade them. And while Russia keeps suggesting that the West, and namely the United States, would provide Ukraine with the nukes they'd need, by my tally, it's been Russia threatening nuclear war no fewer than a dozen times since their invasion of Ukraine began, all while NATO officials call for nuclear de-escalation. The real intent behind this whole narrative is simply to sow doubt and anxiety in the Western populace, in hopes of eroding Western support for Ukraine to help Russia accomplish what they've failed to do on the battlefield for the past 2.5 years now: secure victory. Because if the world devolves into nuclear war, we all lose, Russia included. And while we should take their threats of nuclear war very seriously, we shouldn't take their claims at face value. And with that ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Sorry this week's episode's a bit short. I'm teaching myself how to use Adobe Premiere Pro, and the learning curve is pretty steep, so it's slowing me down a bit, but I'll be back to normal next week. I also want to send my sincere thanks and gratitude out to the Aerospace Media Awards for my recent nomination for Best Artificial Intelligence Aerospace News Coverage for my article last year about the US Air Force's Project Venom, or Viper Experimentation Next-Gen Operations Mode, the program adding AI agents to 6 F-16s out at Eglin Air Force Base. Make sure to swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day to read that article and get the latest news, entertainment, and motivation from all around the force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below, and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.